Hello and welcome to another episode of Super Pros Bros. I'm Player 2, Eli, and with me as always is...
Player 1, Ike, and Brokahanas, did you know that this pod is on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Spotify?
I did not, Vincent Van Bro. Are those the same places that they could
Like,
comment,
share,
and subscribe?
oh, it sure is.
How about that?
Speaking of how about we talk about our first segment today? What do we got on the old Dockerino?
Well, today we got a lot of talk about sequels. And we got justified versus unnecessary sequels up in the order.
How would you describe what is justified and necessary versus bad and unnecessary?
So I should add the quick caveat that I'm not talking about sequels that are like in a trilogy, like Lord of the Rings 2 and 3. Like I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about independent sequels. And I see sequels as necessary or justified if they have their own unique, meaningful story to tell, and it isn't entirely reliant on the previous entry to work. Obviously, there's context for a previous entry, but it should be able to stand on its own legs.
Yep.
Versus the exact inverse, the unnecessary or bad, where it doesn't work, it doesn't stand on its own, it doesn't have anything meaningful to contribute, or it is hobbled by calling back and constantly hearkening back to the original work.
Okay. So what would you say is the first example of, and we've broken this down into two different subcategories of unnecessary sequels and bad sequels, because they're not always the same thing.
Yeah.
So what would you say is what's your first example of an unnecessary sequel?
And I'm gonna also say that I really don't like calling stuff unnecessary in a lot of ways. Art in general is not quote unquote necessary, like from a survival standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But most things, there's some things where it's like, why? Just who asked for this? Like who wanted this in the first place? And I think an easy example for that is El Camino, which was the follow-up movie they made, or the kind of epilogue movie they made after Breaking Bad. 45 minutes of the movie are flashbacks.
Ooh, that's a lot.
That's a lot. That is a lot of time to spend just fucking referencing what happened.
Old material.
Yeah, I would understand a couple minutes, or just if you were good at writing a script, you harken back to it in dialogue. You people talk about what happened. Something that feels a little more organic rather than just, remember in the before time? Like,
yeah. Let me rant at you about the things that you already know, because that's the reason you're watching this. But we have to just include the 2% of people that are watching this because it's just the next thing that Netflix recommended.
Yeah, and it's just, it just pissed on a very good, maybe there was something to talk about with Jesse. There was, his story ends with him just driving into the night in effectively a stolen car, escaping from meth prison. So sure. I mean,
the worst kind of prison.
He did not have a great situation going on. It's maybe there was something to tell. Maybe. But the way it was done, it was so bad. It said very little over 2 hours and just was like, hey, remember Breaking Bad? It was a great show, wasn't it? It's like, yeah, you're ruining it.
Give us your eyeballs for 2 hours because you want to remember more Breaking Bad.
Yeah, just get out.
Well, go ahead, sir.
That's my first add to this beaten bat pile. What do you got for us?
So for unnecessary, one of the ones that, and maybe this is more along the lines of bad, but I think it also fits in the unnecessary because it not only doesn't tell something new, but there's certain actors and characters that are formative to an IP, in my opinion. You think of, my example is The Mask and Blues Brothers. When you think of The Mask, you think of Jim Carrey. That's who Jim Carrey is. If you think of Ace Ventura, how in the holy shit are you going to make an Ace Ventura without Jim Carrey? You can't make Dumb and Dumber without Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels. Like that, it's just not a thing. Like you're just
Yeah,
like, why would you be doing this when you don't have the
that's
people?
sacrilege. What are you
Yeah,
talking about?
exactly. Another one is like making Aladdin 2, without Robin Williams. It's like, yeah, he was kind of like where he wasn't technically the main character. He basically was the backbone that was that whole entire series. So
God rest his soul.
I came up with a two-way tie for this of Blues Brothers 2000, which just didn't have Jim Belushi because he was dead. I believe also didn't have the same director. And the director was kind of a goat, if I remember correctly. And Son of the Mask, which just didn't have Jim Carrey. And it's just like, why are you making this when it's not this? Like, they are those films.
Yeah,
Like them, hate them, whatever. Jim Belushi is Blues Brothers. Without
yeah.
Jim Belushi, you
It's
can't have
integral.
Blues Brothers. Yeah.
It's a fundamental component.
Yeah.
It's
It's like trying to make cake without a sweetener of any kind. You end up with bread. You have to have sugar to make cake. Or,
yeah,
so, honey, whatever. But if somebody's
yeah.
like, oh, I made like if somebody lists off ingredients in a cake they made and at no point in there is a sweet material, you're going to go, oh, no, thanks. You're going to pass on it. It's the same thing with Blues Brothers and Son of the Mask. It's like, I'm sorry, does it have the requisite material for this to be a good product? Oh, no, it doesn't. No, thank you.
Yeah, like I'm not the biggest Jim Carrey fan. Honestly, he's a little out there for me. Like, there's just something about
Jim
him.
Carrey out there?
That's crazy. I know.
You're
But
speaking
like
nonsense.
but there is like, he has a fucking style and kind of, for lack of a better term, je ne sais quoi that like you're not replicating because the dude's nuts. Like, he's fucking nuts.
Yep.
Like, he's that manic energy made human. Like, yeah, you're not, especially for something like The Mask, which is built entirely around his just
Physical performance, yeah.
insano presence on screen. That shit ain't happening.
Nah.
Not a chance.
Speaking of things that shouldn't have happened, what you got waiting in the wings there, champ?
So one of my favorite games of all time was a game called Valkyria Chronicles. And it was a really, really great, not RTS, but kind of combat tactics game. I played the absolute shit out of it. And I was really excited a few years ago when they made Valkyria Chronicles 4. Because it was finally on a PC platform again. I was like, yes! Excellent! Dope! More! Put it in my veins. I've never been so fucking disappointed. And the reason is, so in the first one, you are playing as this neutral country, and there's basically World War II happening around you, and you're basically Switzerland. And so you're trying to not necessarily get involved, and you get pushed to being involved. This new one is happening during the same conflict, basically from the same point of view. It has a bad imitation, and so in the first one, you have your main character is this Commander Welkin, or Captain Welkin, who is this kind of weird way to read a battlefield via nature. Like, and he uses weird knowledge about biology and shit to help out throughout the story. It's kind of a weird, goofy gimmick, but you come to love it pretty fast.
Okay.
And in Valkyria Chronicles 4, you have a guy who listens to the wind for the same sort of shit, like weird insight. It's like, God, it's this shitty imitation, and it doesn't do anything new. It just makes it's a bad copy, and it hurt. It just, if they'd made it a different conflict, if they'd made it a different anything, but it's literally retelling the same story with a slightly different viewpoint. Like, you're not even part of the evil empire or some shit. You're basically mercenaries from Switzerland who are helping fight against the evil empire. It's fundamentally the first game over again.
It's Put 'em on the Glass by Sir Mix-a-Lot. So, for those of you that don't know, Sir Mix-a-Lot came out with Baby Got Back. Talking about how he loves that booty.
God bless him.
Crushed it. Did
Nailed
great.
it.
The producers and the execs went, all right, let's just do that again. And like, I've got this idea. No. Do that exact same thing, but another part of women's anatomy. And so he came up with Put 'em on the Glass, which is about chicks pressing tits against glass. Very innovative. And it went like shit because people saw through it and were like, yeah, we get it. Are you seriously doing the exact same thing? But like, it's bad. It's
Yeah,
bad. Go listen. You'll see it's bad.
yeah,
And
and
it's like that kind of formula, but with with the game and plenty of these, you'll see it's with the same movie. It's like, all right, apply same concept as original.
at
Should we innovate at all?
5% tweakage.
No. Yeah, exactly. What if
Like
we
it,
changed the color grade and replaced one of the actors?
yeah,
That'll throw the audience off. They
it,
won't
it,
see it.
it just like I couldn't even finish the game. I was like, no, this is just a sad imitation that they should never have made. This is nothing new to offer.
All right, well, let's turn that frown upside down, and we're gonna kind of ping pong back and forth here. Let's go to necessary sequels. So those ones were unnecessary, and we'll
Yeah.
show you why these were, in our opinion, necessary. Um, for me, one of the ones that is, while it looks like a trilogy and it is technically a trilogy, it didn't
Mm-hmm.
start out that way.
Mm.
In the original three Star Wars movies, the first one is made independent. It crushes. It does really well, and so they make two more. In the
Yeah.
second one, they did a really good job at kind of throwing the audience for a loop and really playing with and like innovating the experience. Because in the first one, it's good guys do good. There's some casualty along the way, but by and large, we get the bad guys, we crush it, we save the universe. It's very atypical hero's journey storyline, and that's fine.
Yeah.
The movie works and does its thing, introduces us to this universe, and tells a full, grounded story. It's fantastic. In the second one, they really push the limits and throw the audience for a loop. We still have the same characters. We have costs being paid. We have new places being explored, and the bad guys win. What?
Outrageous.
It is outrageous, and it was, I believe, outrageous at the time. I'm sure I would love to go back and look and see like how well it was received. So I'm sure there's a lot of people who walked home and like the '80s going,
What the
"What
fuck?"
the fuck?" Yeah, you're just like, I mean, that's probably the best way to set up a third sequel too, is like leaving people just like huffing and steaming on the way home, like, it
People
can't
are
end like
angry.
this. Yeah. You got your boy losing his hand. You got the cool guy like freaking locked up in the weirdest looking coffee table. You know, betrayal to the max. Like all this stuff's going on.
Shit goes wrong. Yeah.
Shit goes wrong. But it's like something that was unexplored, is very unique, had a different story to tell. It works off of the material, and like knowing that helps. But I think you could probably go in dark and still kind of get a lot of the beats, and it doesn't do that thing that you're talking about in like El Camino, for instance, where it's like it feels like it needs to tell you so much about the previous story. There's very few references to the first movie. Like
Yeah.
there's some, but not like a shit ton. And so, it it just doesn't matter. And it's in some amount of ways. There's like probably 5-10%, of you rooting for who you're rooting for and having hopes, and like some of the information of like, and I'm not going to say spoiler alert because the movie's like 40 years old.
If you've even seen it, that's just on you at this point.
Yeah, it's on you, or you're 10, and why are you listening to this podcast? It's too old for you. Like him going and finding Yoda and doing stuff like that is like kind of hinted at in the first one, but I still think there's like kind of, you know, blue holograms of Obi-Wan telling him in the second one anyway, but six of one, half dozen of another. Yeah, that one totally works independent of the first one, tells a unique story, and throws the whole entire audience that was expecting anything from the first one for this gigantic mental, cart ride, I guess. I don't know, just like throws them on their ass. It's great.
Yeah. So another one was actually the Bourne series. Bourne Identity has a decent stopping off point where he kind of gets out.
Yeah, he finds happiness.
And
Literally,
he's, like, just kind of hanging out in Spain, I think.
Yeah, it's some Mediterranean, because it's on the beach. But he finds this girl that he met early in the series. Early in the first movie. Gets her out of there. Does his freaking like I'm getting free of this shit. Kills everybody and like walks it off. And the ending scene is him walking into like this cafe she opened way away from that, and being with this girl that he was kind of interested in.
Yeah, like it has, but the good thing it does, and very similar to Empire Strikes Back, and probably many of these, honestly, is that it calls back to, like, there's a few loose strings. Like, if you take a moment and think critically about Bourne Identity, it's like, I mean, is that everyone who helped make him? Is that everyone involved in this crazy Black Ops conspiracy? It's like, well, no, they still exist, so we can use them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it has its own reason for starting. Like, and it just goes from there. It doesn't spend too long dragging out, like, remember what happened in the first one? Just in case. Like, it's
Yeah,
like,
I
all
think
right, cool,
there's
here we go.
maybe 2 scenes or something like that. It's really light for sure.
Yeah. And it just operates. It full steam ahead, like, because it does not waste time picking up, too, if I remember right. Like, Born Supremacy goes, it's like 5 minutes in, we're already at Octane, we're already having to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
So, it very quickly throws you back in, and you're like, oh shit, here we go. And what else we got in the necessary sequels category?
The last one that I've chosen, it was a toss up between Aliens and Terminator 2, was Terminator 2, because there's two of them. Two's better than one. Just kidding. That's not why. I'm just a big fan of the Terminator franchise, especially in its infancy before it started getting like really off the rails with CGI.
Mm-hmm.
But Terminator 2, so Terminator the first one is a banger, but it's borderline a horror movie with this like inevitable beast just chasing down your main heroine. In Terminator 2, they really flipped it on its head and explored this kind of universe that they created and like kind of introduced the main character to him, Sarah Connor. Because in the first one, she's living her normal life. Then we have robots and time travel just thrown in. And then we deal with it for a little bit, but it's mostly just, a monster movie of Arnold Schwarzenegger being a monster and going, bah, and just walking around and shooting shit. I need your boots and your spide. Just like walking around being a badass.
Give them to me.
Give them to me. But then Terminator 2 comes back as a good guy, and we get more explanation in the universe that we didn't need, but I think it rounds out the IP as a general whole, because instead of going, whoa, that's wild, we go, okay, and we get like more intel, and also changes, the kind of POV, and changes the story type, which I think is really fun. It isn't required, but when you can take and kind of change genre almost and go from borderline dystopian horror to, just action thriller. It's really, I think that's really kind of cool, and also like still not lose, the kind of joie de vivre mise en scène that you created in the first one. It still very much is in the same universe. It feels like it. You're not like a band apart or anything like that. You are very much still where you were, just kind of taking a different, the camera just got tilted a little bit. It makes everything feel different, but very much is still very fun, tells a very innovative story. I think I actually watched the second one before the first one, and I think this is how we know it's a good sequel as well as a necessary sequel, because, upon watching the first one, oh, cool, I learned more things. But also, like you were saying earlier, you don't need to know anything about it. I watched the second one and it was like, this is dope. Like, what did I miss out on? Like, there's a couple scenes where they talk about little background stuff, and if you watch the first one, it makes more sense. But like watching the second one by itself, it's still like, this thing slaps, son. But to return back to the land o' bad.
So now we can talk about bad sequels with good original stuff. So it's not that these are unnecessary, quote unquote. They have their own story to tell. They just fucking suck. And there is no bigger offender to this core concept than fucking Disney. I love, and I will speak for my brother, that we love a lot of classic Disney stuff. There's some stuff that slaps.
And it...
Yes. And I did not know what's going outside of my apartment. Sorry. But I think the biggest offender of having a very good first and a very bad second has to be Hunchback of Notre Dame. The original Hunchback of Notre Dame is awesome. The gargoyles are a little weird, but the human element is outstanding. The music is phenomenal.
Hellfire!
There's a lot of emotional gravitas in the movie. It also does something fairly novel to Disney in a way, that the main character does not get the girl.
Yeah, which I think is like a very good twist too.
Yeah, And it still has one of the few moments in movies that sends a chill up my spine when he like rips free from a pair of stone pillars and just like walks out looking like an absolute unit. Um,
Turns out all those years of cardio
turns
based
out
bell
just
ringing.
yanking 120 to 500 pound bells over and over again make you an absolute animal. Anyway, but the second one, oh boy. Second one's like this weird kind of pseudo love story because even the freak needs to find a girlfriend. The problem is, while this is a fine little romp to go on with the someone from the circus, the whole its villain sucks. Its plot sucks. It's the first one. It's this whole thing. The first one's plot, like the first Count Frollo is literally looking to commit genocide on the gypsies. That is his whole goal. Like, he's not even subtle about it.
No.
He's there to kill him. Like, holy shit. Like, that man's a
And
madman.
does the good writing bit of making the character think they're doing the right thing. He's not just being evil to be evil. He believes he's in the right.
Yeah, he believes he's cleansing the city of a plague, essentially. Like, he believes he's purifying the city. Because he thinks they're all criminals and fucking street urchins and shit.
Also, turns out there's a lot of historical relevance in
Yeah.
examples of people doing that.
That could be a lot more true and real for a lot of Romani people than it should be. Anyway. But the second one, the whole fucking plot is that a dude is, like, out to commit a heist. That's the whole evil plot, is that this fucking sad sack magician who runs a circus is out to fucking steal a big pile of money. Who the fuck cares? Like, and the whole, like, he's gonna get leverage, so the whole plot point is, like, his whole I can get away with this is because his plan sucks. The city guard immediately finds him, and they're like, oh, we know where you're going. And he's like, but I stole the fucking captain's kid. He stole, like, Esmeralda and whatever the blonde dude is. Phoebus, thank you. Stole their kid. That plot point is resolved in 5 seconds. I'm not even joking. Like, reveals he has him, and the fucking love interest literally throws a rope, makes like a tightrope walk, runs across, swings around it, grabs the kid out of his hands. Like, he just lets go. It's like, oh shit, and is like caught off guard, and suddenly he doesn't have leverage. And then they arrest him. Everybody wins. What the fuck? It's so bad. Like, when contrasted to this dark, gritty, gothic original, it's this sad sack piece of shit. It hurts. It offends me deeply.
All right, well, to stop you from being offended any more deeply, I'll pick up this ball and dunk it. My kind of input on the bad sequel with good IP and good original ideas is a tie. I think I'm going to go with Matrix Revolutions, but Godfather 3 is definitely in the conversation. But in Matrix Revolutions, you've got this great, this mixing kind of dystopia with philosophy with action movie in the original Matrix. It's so cool. Like, you're kind of like discovering this universe. It's really cool. And I do think it is a necessary sequel because as much as the first one ends in quotes clean, it very much was set up for a future one. It's kind
there's
of
a
like,
lot of loose ends.
It's kind of like the first Terminator. You changed the reality so much. There's so much to explore to not is borderline criminal. We've introduced alt universe, differing timelines, differing objectives of society, so on and so forth. And it's like, whoa. And
the first one, like, you learn that people are basically subsumed by the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
Like, that
they are batteries of a sort.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And it's just so insane. There's like basically two realities. There's it's so bananas, and it's really cool. And so, like, the follow-up, it's like, oh, cool. And then it's just an action movie, and it's like, it doesn't really, there's like a lot of kind of cool fight scenes of like letting you get to see what Neo is potentially like capable of, and then it just kind of like lingers and doesn't do much and doesn't establish much, and like the story it creates is really like somewhere between convoluted and nonsensical. and then the third one just makes it even worse. I no thank you. I appreciate the attempt. I think it was like an interesting idea, but a failed execution, or muddled at the very least.
We get lost sight of what made it good originally.
Yeah, and I think this is something that's very important to kind of say about the latter category, because I think unnecessary sequels, it was problematic to start with, right? Like the idea of El Camino, the idea of Blues Brothers, the idea of Son of the Mask, the idea of Valkyrie,
Yeah.
it was somewhere between a bad baby that should never been birthed
Yeah.
and a cash grab.
Yeah.
And both of which are one of those things that you should see in development and either accept that you're a piece of shit that doesn't appreciate art, which, enjoy your money. I'm still going to like judge you. And hopefully I'll be in a place to be judged at some point during my life as such. But these other ones, especially like Hunchback of Notre Dame, Matrix Revolutions, the idea,
There's something there.
there's something there, and it's not like creating art is hard. I think that's something we like noted before, but it deserves being noted, especially when we're critiquing, is that making a movie is fucking hard. So
Yeah.
part of this is just, you don't win them all, and sometimes you're going to lose, and it sucks when it was your
And
baby and you tried and you came up short.
And it's very it is exacerbated when you are following something up that is so good. Like
Yeah.
that, because then there's an expectation set. There's like a
Yeah,
precedent set.
there's a comparison point too. Like you can look
Exactly.
at it from the other one. When
Yeah.
a movie is in its own vacuum, it's a disservice to compare it to other movies, because how could you? But when it's in the same universe as this other story you created, it's so hard to not even just
Yeah.
from a logistical sense.
Yeah.
That being said,
Which is why I have to talk about Borderlands 3.
buckle
All right.
in, kiddos. I know how this rant ends.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Borderlands Borderlands is one of our favorite game series ever. I love Borderlands. I love the newest entry for Borderlands that came out with Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I think it was a lot of fun. Not perfect, but a lot of fun.
Yep.
And Borderlands 2 is one of my favorite games ever made. We'll come back to this.
Don't worry.
Don't
There's
worry.
more.
However, Borderlands 3 is a fucking disaster. And for a number of reasons. The first off being, its writing feels fucking lazy. There are so many plot points that are so easy. It's like, I fixed this with 2 sentences. Like, you couldn't be bothered. Like, there's just some nonsense that jumpstarts so much of the plot that just, it almost feels like they believe their audience were simpletons. That they're just like, they won't think about it. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but it did. Now what? How do we reconcile this? There's some of the dialogue, like some of the dialogue is fucking hokey. Like it's Gearbox stuff, so it's always kind of hokey. But some of it felt very extra, and like it tried to be edgy and weird.
It
Like,
was
stop.
it was intentionally leaning at and into the cringe as a selling point, and I think that really hurt because so much of the universe itself has been cringe before, but not
Not
put up in such a
so
way.
deliberately.
Yeah, well, like I mean, it's cringe, but looked at from a different angle. Like depending how you look at it, it's cringe. But Borderlands 3 is like trying to be
Borderlands
cringe.
has always been fucking goofy and over the top.
Yeah.
It is 1,000,000% goofy and over the top, but it doesn't try to be like this edgy, cringy shit.
Yep.
And there's too much of that, and it feels like at certain points, some of the characters who previously been badass, just like their fucking balls fell off. And it felt so dissonant.
This is including the women, by the way, that the balls fell off of.
Yes. Notably, the women who the balls fell off of. I just don't have a better expression for that. I don't. I'm sorry. And so the game felt bad. It felt like a genuine middle finger to the fans. It felt lazy, and like the game, it played fine. Like it functioned as a game. It was okay. Like its gunplay was fine. Its character trees and skill trees were fine. But like the story of the game and like the meat of the game,
Yeah.
just it left a miserable taste in your mouth.
Dizzy and annoyed. Yeah.
Yeah, because there was so much potential. Like it had such a good setup, and it had a lot of really, really, really good potential.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so many points where they're like, there's so many cool outs they could take, and they just never do, and it's so disappointing.
Yeah. And also one of the things you brought up, I think, and one of the, like what we're going to talk about this in the future is talking about video games as a storytelling medium because more and more some of the best stories are being told via video games
Yeah.
because you get to be the central player and so like it feels a lot more,
Yeah,
indie
there
like
are some that
your
absolutely take advantage of that.
yeah. But in Borderlands 3, one of your biggest problems was
Oh yeah, you never feel integral.
yeah.
Like,
In the first two, you matter. You make decisions that
yeah,
impact the world.
like the people talk. Like, you are very important. The main villain makes a point to talk to you specifically, the player. The NPCs you interact with, who kind of drive the story, talk to you a bunch, and like they recognize that they can't do it without you. In this one, you just feel like a glorified mercenary, and you're not that important.
Yeah, you might as well
Like,
be the cameraman.
yeah,
You
it
don't
doesn't
ever
have.
interact with like the big bosses. You're following around the NPCs that are cool and have like good storylines, but you're following them around as they interact.
It's like you do something. The consequences of what you do drive a plot point, but you're never mentioned in like cutscenes. You're never present. Like, it feels like the writing was just so lazy and so bad, and its ending is stupid. Like, I'm not even gonna go down that rabbit hole. The ending is fucking dumb, and makes no sense whatsoever, and has no justification. It just sort of happens and left me scratching my head going, "What the fuck did I just watch?"
So to flip reverse that, shall we return to the land of good?
Let's go to the land of good, please. Save me from myself.
On the opposite end of Borderlands 3, but in a similar type of universe, oddly enough, is for me my first entry in good sequels is Mad Max Fury Road.
Movie slaps.
Movie slaps. If you haven't seen it, you were doing yourself a disservice. The movie is just all kinds of gangbusters.
Watched it twice in theaters, same day. Do not regret my choice.
That's dope. So the original canon of the Mad Max films, Mad Max, Road Warrior, was Thunderdome. Those all came out in like the 80s, 90s. And then in the late 2010s, we get Mad Max Fury Road. And I think one of the reasons this isn't the good, not necessary, is because it didn't need to exist. It has its own, interesting ideas, but in no way is it necessary. The story's been very kind of summed up at that point, but the creator decided to come back to it and come back to it in a big way he did. And it's just, we're all better for it existing. It's in a universe, but not requisite to or from the universe. Like
No, I've
I
never
have
seen
friend,
a Mad Max movie,
yeah,
and I watched it.
you do not need to watch the Mad Maxes before. If you do, I think you get there's little bits that like, you kind of get. Like I would say it increases your viewing percentage by like probably 5% at best, but it's still just whole cloth, just badass. Music slaps, the visual slap, the story slaps, the cat. Like there is nothing bad about this movie.
Pacing is outstanding. Like,
Have you ever wanted to see a guy play a guitar flamethrower on top of like a 30-foot monster truck? This is your
with
movie.
speakers mounted behind him?
With speakers mounted behind him that are fully functional, by the way. This is not like the
Yes.
whole entire movie minus like 5%, 10% of the movie is like shot practically, which when you see the movie is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
The other
The
thing
one
that,
thing they CGI'd in is a storm because they didn't want to put people in a desert tornado.
yeah,
Go figure.
also making one would have been very expensive. But I mean, so you get all these
Couple
awesome
weather
things.
machine.
Yeah. You get these like long car chases, these shootouts, these hyper masculine things. Also, the movie is about feminism, and the main characters are all women, and it passes the Bechdel test like fucking shruggily. Like it's so easy. It's just
Yeah,
like
and
it's
it
one of those
doesn't
things.
feel forced either.
No,
I
it's
don't know.
one of those things that just like it happens because it's good storytelling and it shows a lot of good equality in its writing and its character development and it's just character choices, which is just brilliant.
Yeah.
Speaking of brilliance,
Something actually it's a little bit of a contentious pick between us, but I actually enjoyed Deadpool 2 as a sequel. I thought it held up fairly well. It does have some weird pacing issues in the middle.
It's the only problem I have with it. It's not a contentious pick. I just like
You
there's a
sounded
middle section.
more averse to it when I suggested it earlier. Maybe I read too much into it.
There's a feels like it's probably 15 minutes, but it feels like 30 to me. That just like bogs down the movie. The rest of the movie I love. Although again, there is one of those choices that it's literally for first time viewers only, where if you watch it, you're gonna get got. You're not gonna see it coming. That's totally fine. And then upon rewatching, I think it doesn't detract, but it's just kind of like a thing that's there. Yeah. Those are like the only two kind of in quotes problems I have with it.
Yeah. But overall, I enjoyed it. I think it still has a lot of the same good humor, as a lot of the good kind of bizarre fourth wall breaks. How do you not love Ryan Reynolds in general?
Yeah.
It has pretty good like visuals and action sequences. And yeah, it's a lot of it's some fucking wonky humor. Like when Ryan Reynolds has tiny fucking legs. Sorry.
Is that in this one? I thought that was in the first one.
No, it's this one, because it's after he gets torn in half.
Oh, right.
Well, the first one, he has a tiny hand.
Yeah, he has to cut his own hand off. That's right. No, this one's great.
Yeah, so it's still. I don't think it is as magical as Deadpool 1, because it's hard to have that kind of shock factor of like, oh my god, these are comic book characters doing weird, crazy shit. Like, it loses some of that, but it's still very good. It's still very enjoyable.
Yeah, it kind of dials it. It reduces the story factor and dials up the zany a little bit, which I think is completely fine. It's more of a wild romp than I think the first one is like wholesale. It really does a great, it very much follows, like I was talking about the first Star Wars movie being, a hero's journey. Deadpool 1 is classic hero's journey. Yep. It has a good intro and, kind of closed circle storytelling. And I think that really works really well. Deadpool 2 doesn't follow that at all and just kind of has fun.
Yeah.
Which, it's Deadpool. That's kind of what he's about. So it fits very much with his universe.
Very on brand.
Yeah. Well, still staying in that universe, do you mind if I go to my next one, or do you have more to add? All right.
No,
so we're staying in the Marvel universe. My next good sequel that wasn't necessary but is beloved by at least us is Logan. One of the things I really liked about this one is that it was it's a good example of an alt take, as opposed to just like kind of making more in the similar vein. It took this very dire alternative take of, what if shit, society started going to shit? What if, Professor X started getting like old and having like maladies?
Seizures.
Like what happens when a super powerful mutant has issues of a medical variety that, kind of conflict and run into his powers? It's like, what happens then? And it's like a really good kind of experiment and, rabbit hole to delve down. And it really does a great job at showcasing all the things and showing, a tragic story and doing it in a way that is very, I don't know, it does it without going too far in one direction, where it's just like they get to live their glory years and like as if there's no cost and, kicking a beaten dog. It kind of threaded that line of having a sad character getting to be awesome, but still having that, kind of depressing, nostalgic sadness tone. I don't know what words mean. But like kind of following that and chasing that and just like being there and sitting in that moment and letting the, audience experience this potential and just like kind of sit with that. I think it really is quite great.
It's very somber.
That's the word I was looking for.
It is very good. Like I think it is entirely carried by the chemistry between Logan and Professor X.
Moving on to our last good sequel before we close out our section 1. Eli, what you got for him?
Well, I hated on Borderlands 3, but I'm about to gush about Borderlands 2.
Yeah, boy.
Borderlands 1 ended, and it could have just ended. Like, it was a decently final spot, but Borderlands 2 did a very, very good job expanding on the universe, introducing a baller villain.
Yeah, boy.
God bless Handsome Jack. Absolute nutter.
He's a cutie patootie.
And they took their kind of their wacky winning formula, said, all right, let's lean deeper into it. And indeed they did, and it works. It's good.
The characters that they introduce are tremendous. They gave them great kind of backstory. There's a lot of things that are like developed more fully.
Yeah.
It it really takes the first one. Like the first one was a testament to a new kind of genre and type and take on that dystopian potential future.
Yeah.
And then they first one set the groundwork, and it's a good game, but its story is kind of...
It's not exceptional. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's a good shooter.
Its world creation is very impressive. 2 just goes, what were we missing from the first one? Oh, a story? Cracks knuckles, just
hold my beer.
Yeah, let's fucking get down to business.
Yeah. It's very good. The side characters are very enjoyable. The humor is great. The actual gameplay is really good. And they
Stallion!
Stallion? Yeah, and it ends in a good place. And even the DLC they made for it was all pretty good. And
there's one DLC in particular.
One is the best.
Dink!
Yeah, I mean, Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep was literally good enough. They made a spin-off game for it with Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
Yep.
Come on. It's so good.
She's got that badonk-a-donk.
Yeah. So yeah, it just, and there's a lot of really good hidden lore. So much of the game is wacky and zany, but you can go find stuff that reminds you. It's oh, this place is a nightmare.
Yeah. We're having fun in a carnival of despair.
Yeah, it's oh yeah, human experimentation is a thing. Ha 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 ha. Excellent. So yeah, game crushed it. So good. Had a terrific style to it. Has good narrative twists, and has a really good twist plot that makes it is a really good plot twist that makes so much sense. And when you put it back and read the dots, it's oh shit. It's well, the other thing it does too that Borderlands 3 failed to do is it does a very good job being aware, because mild spoiler territory. Sirens are very important to the story. Notably, Iridium sirens are very important to the story, and one of the playable characters is a siren. And so she is mentioned, Maya is mentioned in an audio log, and someone lies to cover for her and says she's not an Iridium-based siren. So that's why they have no intention of capturing you, despite you being a siren.
It definitely covered all its bases.
Yes, it did such a good job not leaving... Its writing wasn't lazy, and it shows. Yeah. And it's so good as a result.
10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yes.
It's another one of the ones... I played some of Borderlands 1. I played all of Borderlands 2. I enjoyed Borderlands 1. I don't remember why I bailed on it, but Borderlands 2, hook, line, and sinker just dragged me into it. It's just holy shit. It's this is the difference story makes, and this is just such a great step forward.
Yeah. It was and still is a phenomenal game.
Concur. And with that, I believe we have fully given you our take and our examples. We will leave you with this fantastic commercial and see y'all in a bit. Have you always wished for the good old days of lawlessness within the law? Or not knowing who you can trust on a case? Introducing Now That's What I Call Noir, with such hits as Where's the MacGuffin? I told you to trust nobody. Don't let dames get in the way. And all the 20s beatnik phrases a scuzzy alley can hold. Warning, Now That's What I Call Noir may cause loss of friends, casual sexism, lack of discussion skills, and possible paranoia. If any of these symptoms arise, don't call your doctor. They're already in on it.
And welcome back, everyone. So, Broskinkowski, what have you got for your pitch of the week?
It's rough title so far is $1 Million Box Spring. So a newlywed couple buy their first house together, which comes furnished. And when cleaning out one day, they find bundles of cash in the box spring.
Oh.
These characters go through multiple scenarios. They discuss the morality of keeping it. They're not like one of these characters that you see in these dumb, because this movie has kind of been done before, the circumstance of like finds,
Suddenly rich. Yeah.
suddenly rich, finds rich item, whatever, but it's somebody else's, and they didn't even think about it. These motherfuckers have done their cinema due diligence. They know this shit, and they're like, all right, well maybe this is somebody else's, but we kind of need the money, and they end up thinking they get chased by a character that they always thought was sketchy, and turns out they weren't. They were being chased down by just some enthusiastic dude. And because of a simple mistaken understanding that took place during the honeymoon, they accidentally kill him thinking that he was hired by the mob when he was actually just some guy who was, wanted this, or they owed money because he was the photographer. There's something far less nefarious going on.
Yeah.
And it's actually just this misunderstanding. And so it's kind of like a meta take on like what happens in these circumstances. And just kind of like a fun kind of romp. What about you? What pitch idea you got this week?
So, again, Giga rough title is Parliament of the Arcane. And what I wonder is if things, so if somewhere in like, I'm using Europe as my rough working point, but if it was more of a theocracy, so it was more driven by religion and magic was associated with religion, like how would that affect tension? Would that lead to a lot more vigilant policing? Would that lead to kind of people being watched and spectated? Would people try and take over? And what would happen for people who could kind of operate outside of the theocracy and outside of the two parties, kind of not warring for power, but politicking and conniving for power? Like, if they could be disentangled and not buy into the rhetoric of either religion, like what kind of advantage would that give someone? And
there's a lot of exploration to be done there.
Yeah. I love the idea of kind of modern magic and the kind of coupling of magic and religion, just as a thought experiment as much as anything else. Do
you think you'd have it be where the magic is part of the religion or adverse to the religion?
I don't think actually either. I think it would be just an attribution. So there'd be different schools of magic that are associated with a different religion.
Oh,
so anybody can learn it, but it's spent so long societally reinforced. So, controlling fire is, beholden to Tiamat or something of that nature. And so that there's two massive schools of magic that are basically the two big governing religious bodies. It's like they aren't technically entwined, but enough societal reinforcement has made it that way.
That's really cool. Yeah, there's a lot for you to play with there too. Like that opens itself up for a lot of writing material and a lot of kind of deep diving. Like if you have like kind of any religious or since they're different schools, you can kind of have like this tribal warfare vibe of like, fire users against whoever, against like wind users or water users, something like that, like where you can use it as like kind of stand-ins for aspects of humanity and kind of like the way we fight over things that are and aren't meaningless. There's a lot of kind of fun duality or it seems like anyway.
Yeah.
That's dope, man.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see more on that one. Speaking of duality between elements and magic and such like that, what's your rec of the week?
So
he said knowingly.
I see what you did there. That smug ass grin off your face. Wipe it. Anyway. So this last week I was violently ill with COVID. It absolutely destroyed me. And so I wanted to watch a feel-good show, and I defaulted to Avatar: The Last Airbender because it is awesome.
Penguin!
I forgot, how much this show makes you feel things.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. Like, I've legit cried at a couple moments this show. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be crying. Stop making me feel things, cartoons. If
You're
you haven't
animated.
seen it,
How dare you make physical things occur in my life?
outrageous. If for whatever reason you haven't seen it, watch the show. It's phenomenal. In every sense of the word. It is one of the more perfect shows ever, in my opinion.
Concur.
Like, don't watch the absolute fucking travesty that M. Night Shyamalan did to it. That was a war crime. He should be tried.
Yep. Tried, drawn, quartered.
Yeah, all the above. But it is so good. It is such a good flow. It is really good pacing. It is really good little derpy humor. It's a very good coming of age story. It's great. Like,
yeah.
Someone went, do we want to make an episodic show or a long form story? And they said, why not both? And it works. It just yeah.
All time banger for sure.
Yeah, and so I've made it back to. I'm coming close up to the end because I'm in book 3. So yes. Also, my God, I forgot I still get chills whenever you watch like Aang go into the Avatar state.
Oh
It's
yeah,
just so dope. Like I've also noticed the music in the show is so good and very well themed to characters.
there is, I believe. Hold on, might be able to. I think it's by like Sideways. Okay, so yeah, there's a video that I will tag in this. There's a fantastic video by the channel Sideways. Highly recommend if you're into musical, like kind of cinema stuff. But he does a breakdown of the musical Symmetry and the especially eclectic instrumentation choices for Avatar, and it is mind-blowing. I would highly recommend watching it for anybody who's of that kind of interest. Yeah. It will be linked in the show notes. And wherever you're watching this, it'll be below. It is so good. But it is subtly bananas busted how good the music is in the show.
Yeah. What have you got as your rec of the week? Because I don't need to spend an hour gushing about Avatar. I know
that's its own episode.
Yeah,
just
us. It could be. Just hour of us just all praise
polishing the Aang statue that is Avatar. So my rec of the week is a little less feel goody, unless you're into some of that ultra violence. It's The Raid 2. Since we're talking about sequels, I kind of wanted to throw a sequel in there as the recommend. The Raid 1 is amazing, highly recommend. The Raid 2 is also amazing, highly recommend. If you like some ultra violence and some you get to feel smart, right? Because it's a foreign film, and also the talking in it barely means anything. So if you don't want to read subtitles, don't worry, you don't have to. They matter a little, but definitely not a lot. The kind of bring it home of both of those films is its cinematography is amazingly good, especially for a fight film, and its fight choreography is insane.
It is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. Oh my God.
Yeah, the main character is played by Iko Uwais. I don't know how you say his name. I don't know how to speak Malay. It is an Indonesian film, and he does an absolutely. He's a phenomenal martial artist in his own right, but he does such a good job with the choreography. Like, it feels like it has a lot of impact. Just also in the first one and in the second one, there is some gritty stuff. Like,
oh yeah,
you feel some stuff.
That's gonna hurt. Oh, it does. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, like
the way they also do one of the things I really love, especially about foreign action movies, but this one in particular, is that I don't know if it's the timing, I don't know if it's the audience they're shooting for or what, but the way they shoot fight scenes in non big Hollywood movies by and large is just so much better. I don't know
They
if it's
don't
the
just make
stunt
cuts.
people or yeah, it's something about it. I don't know if they're looking to save time for American ones or what, but the way they shoot the impact of fistfights is so much more palpable and
Yep.
powerful in especially Asian action movies. You can see it in especially Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee, but also like new Jet Li stuff and The Raid is just like the way they shoot it. You get to see the whole entire thing. There's no these like there's very few like whip pans. There's a lot of great tracking shots where you just get to see the martial artists show off on each other's faces. And it's
Yeah.
yeah, I'm here for that, and I would like to see all of it in more plays. And they make sure you can. There's very
There's
little like whipping around, and you're never kind of like, wait, what's happening? You're like, oh, that guy's getting wrecked.
yeah.
That
They
is all the scenes, and thank you. They also did one of the cooler shots, and I think it's been done in other films, but it's still really cool and very innovative. There's a shot in the film. This is like kind of one of those testaments to very smart, very resilient, and very kind of creative film shot. There's the scene where you're following one of the characters in this kind of car chase, and the way they shoot it is they have the cameraman on the back of a motorcycle following up, and they're doing the motorcycle driver is doing this really good job of keeping it nice and smooth, and then he gets in the car, and then the the seat of the car is actually another person who's a cameraman, so he can pass the camera over and have it be this clean, clear tracking pan where it's just like you never feel like it feels just organic the way the camera just kind of moves around. If you did that in a Hollywood thing, you would need like a super good rig and all the stuff that they probably couldn't afford or get access to. And
just like,
just they're just
fuck
like,
it.
what if we had three cameramen who were like, in really good shape and could be sat on and like slowly like change the camera could change hands. I'm pretty sure they have it on like oh, I should know what this is called, a gimbal, where it like it kind of reduces its shake so that it kind of is gyroscopic and so it moves a lot more smoothly, which does make a huge difference. One of the better technology things I know about with cameras in the last bunch of years, my experience.
Mm.
And so being able to move it around so seamlessly, and it's just like, and you look behind the scenes, it's like, oh, they just got creative. They didn't get tech. They just like got a couple people to dress
Money.
as chairs. Literally, one of them is dressed head to toe like a canvas chair in like a
Like,
BMW. It's
fucking car upholstery.
terrific. Go out, see the movie, both of them, or either of them in any order. Like again, it's one of those like, if you know the first one, it helps.
A little bit of context for the first
Yeah.
one, and like you don't know who Rama is. It's the
Yeah.
main character, but that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Strap in, get ready for the ride.
yeah, like it's another of those movies that like it starts pressing the gas, and it's like, all right, we're not gonna let off for an hour.
What is this, scene one? Time to get to 60.
Yeah,
Just driving on the movie's just driving on the Autobahn the whole time with nobody in front of him. Just it's friggin' rad. And speaking of foot down on the gas the whole entire time, I've got a music rec this week.
there you go.
As
folks.
of I've been listening to a lot of MF Doom recently, or can also be known under his many other pseudonyms, especially Victor Vaughn and King Ghidorah. If you're looking around on the old Spotify, there's a specific song and album that I've been like really re-listening to, which is Vaudeville Villain. The title track is just. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day about how so much of the musicality makes a big difference, especially in rap, because it's a bunch of the times it's just kind of like one hook that's reiterated occasionally and changed around. In basically every MF Doom track, the music in the background that he's rapping over is unbelievably great. It's just like by itself, you could just listen to it on loop and just like groove. And then when you add the lyricist master that is MF Doom, it'll just rock your socks off. One of the cool things about this, as somebody who writes not in that zone but in a similar one, is there's this let me see if I can find it really quickly. Okay, so there's this channel on YouTube called Highlighted. I will link one of his videos on here, but it shows the words and it highlights where the kind of A and B matchup of, the kind of the phonic kind of mirroring that happens in rap that creates the kind of, like if you say blue and then zoo, that kind of rhyming scheme. With him, it is wall to wall, all colored because he finds so many opportunities to rhyme. And it is like you can watch other people on this channel. They're all amazing. These are all great lyricists. But then you look at Dooms and you're like, oh my god, he just like found a way to rap like there's blocks of it where he's rapping like he'll have a sentence then another sentence, and in each sentence they are going, they're angularly going back and forth. So that's not to be like formulaic, but like they're still rhyming. He's rhyming each word in each sentence to the next word in the sentences. It's like, I'm sorry, the fuck? It's just like so cool. And also, I think amazing to listen to. And on that groovy note, we have reached the end of our episode. Thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this, please feel free to
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe.
and don't forget, new episodes of Super Pros Bros come out the first and third Saturday of every month.
Bye.
Bye.